Okay, hello guys. This is the third video on the lecture series of creating Flask sentiment application. In the last video, if you guys remember, we have created one Python script called main.py in which we created a function called getSentiment, and that function is going to give us the sentiment of any text given to that function. Okay, now in this video I want to begin with the layout and server part of our application. Before I do that, I would like to first discuss with you about the Flask directory structure, because somebody who has not been involved in web programming in Python or in any other framework, they need to get familiar with this directory structure, because I remember I have struggled a lot in this particular section. It gets really confusing to understand the directory. I mean, the way files are put, the way different files are put in the folder. So we need to understand this aspect before we can actually start coding. I will not go into much theory. I mean, I have only included that part which is very necessary, and I have not gone very deep into various other aspects of directory structure. So let's get started. So the first thing that you need to know about Flask directory structure is that there is this notion of root folder. Now, what do we mean by root folder? So root folder is a folder where you intend to create your Flask application, where you intend to include all your Python files and other folders like CSS, templates, images, and JavaScript. If you don't understand what templates and CSS or JavaScript means, you don't have to worry about it. You can learn all these things as you go along, because these are not very difficult to learn if you have already learned Python. So CSS and HTML part is quite easy. To learn JavaScript, you need to give 1 or 2 days, but that is not very hard to do, right? So you just need to understand right now that there is this notion of root folder. In that root folder, we include all the files such as main Python file and other folders which are going to decide our app's look and feel. Okay, so after we understand root folder, we need to understand templates folder. So there is this root folder. Root folder is a folder where all our Python files and other CSS template files are included. Now there is this folder called templates folder. Now in this templates folder, we include all the HTML files, and these HTML files we are going to render from this Python main file. Okay, you don't have to think too much about it. You just have to understand there is this root folder, and in that root folder there's this template folder, and in this template folder we hold all our HTML files that we are going to be rendering on in our web page using this Python main file. Okay, and once we understand templates folder, we need to understand this static folder. Now what do we mean by this static folder? Again, we are doing all these things in our root folder. In our root folder we have got this template folders, and in that root folder we have got this static folder. Now this static folder will hold all the static content of our web page, which we are not planning to change, such as images, css is something that decides our web pages look, and JavaScript, which is also used for something which we can discuss in some later lectures. Okay, now in this static folder, we can further divide it into three different folders for images, CSS, and JavaScript. But that is not necessary. We are good to just put. We don't need to make different folders for these three different types of files, we can just get around with mm, by creating usual files. Okay, so that's all we need to know for now. So once we are comfortable with these concepts, we can code the Flask server for rendering our HTML pages. So I hope you understood this concept. We will meet in the next lecture where I will be coding the Flask server side, which is going to render our templates folder, which will hold all our HTML pages. Yes. Okay. Thank you for joining me.